So today I'm talking to Troy Gray, and we're communicating via Skype. I'm in Las Vegas, he's in Adelaide, and we both were speakers at the City Gala Summit. Now, Troy has his own video production distribution network, and I wanted to talk to him a little bit about his entrepreneurial story, his vision, a little bit more about what he does, and also just share ideas with everyone who's interested in learning more about business and how to succeed in an entrepreneurial venture. So thanks for joining us today.
Nick, beautiful. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Well, let's get into first talking a little bit about what it is that your company does and what it's all about.
So my company is called Vox Ventures, so VOX Ventures, and I've been operating in Australia for about 15 years, and I create TV shows. Initially, it was for a local market. It then became a national concept where my shows were picked up by multiple mainstream TV channels. It then sort of snowballed into international feature documentaries, and for the last 3 years, I've effectively been creating my own unscripted formats, so reality TV for international syndication.
Huh. You know, I got married on a reality TV show called Below Deck. And I've been very interested in actually the art of making videography myself, because our company creates about an hour worth of videos a week for YouTube. So we have 16 channels, but we've always been interested on the professional side of distribution and getting your stuff out there into like a larger network like Hulu or Netflix, or showing our stuff at film festivals. And I was at your website today and I saw that you did quite a bit of that in film festivals all over Australia and have really gotten your videos out there. I'd love to hear a little bit about that process of how you're able to go from that creative process, building the story, building the script, putting the team together, and then actually getting it into the festival and hear that whole story.
Yeah, well, your timing's really good to ask about that, because next week is the International Television Convention in Cannes in France. It's called MIP TV, and effectively that's where everyone from around the world, I think there's about 13,000 people representing countries, all around the world, TV networks, production companies, all buying and selling what they believe is going to be the next big thing. And it's a great question that you ask, because people in my industry, in television, in film, to try and pitch to the right people and have yourself heard, it's the single greatest, I suppose, hardship of being a part of the industry, because you end up potentially becoming one of hundreds of pitches that are landing on desks every day. And so how do you stand out? I've found that the easiest way to do that is to do a lot of the heavy lifting, so a lot of the work before you get to pitch stage. So rather than just develop an idea and then go to a broadcast partner or a production company, be it in your own country or in another market overseas, don't just go to them with pitch documentation or even just a pilot. Start talking to them about the collaborative partners you have, potential distributing channels, in particular money that you can bring to a development fund, so your association with having advertising or branding already locked in. So those sorts of things will make someone in an executive level open their eyes and say, well, this takes away a lot of the risk and we want to hear more.
How are you finding people that are interested in funding your ventures? I mean, I know so many people, having built my company in Hollywood, that are searching for funding, and 99% of them never get a shot or even a foot in the door.
Yeah, it's a very good question again, because it is a tough market. You're trying to convince someone that my idea is better than the next one and it's going to make lots of money. Well, as an investor, the way they want to see things is, how do I get a return and why should I give you my money? So again, I think it comes back to a lot of the groundwork. And one of the biggest things that I've done, or I believe there's two in particular, I should say, is one, I've aligned myself with the world's biggest advertising agency. So I was able to start communicating with BBDO. BBDO, they have a head office in New York, but they also have a branch over here in Australia and throughout the Asian region, which is close to us. And I basically went to them and said, okay, if you want exclusive access to my shows with your brands, this is how I see it working. And that takes me to point two, which is I've developed a template for my reality shows that involve, I suppose, multiple revenue streams across lots of platforms. So I'm not just thinking about television, I'm thinking about digital. I'm thinking about interactive social TV and how that can benefit not only the show, but ultimately people that are putting money in, and how we can make more money than just through syndication and licensing alone.
That's cool. I have to think about this also because right now I'm self-funding a Broadway musical in my company. And a lot of people are trying to push me down the route of getting other partners involved. So it's definitely on my mind. Also the idea of actually doing it in the form of video as well, because right now James Franco is working on a movie on the book The Game, which is about the history of our first 2 years of business. And I've been working on a musical about the last 15 years of our company and our business. And I'm putting together a behind-the-scenes documentary of how we're creating this musical, especially not having a situation where none of us have ever been in the entertainment world on that side, or anywhere near story writing, attending seminars on story with Robert McKee or production meetings and what have you. What I've been learning is also a lot of people who are producers like myself, a lot of them aren't actually even involved with the story themselves. I mean, it sounds like you're a producer that is pretty hands-on. What roles are you kind of filling? It sounds like you're filling quite a few shoes.
Yeah, I am. Well, my venture in the television industry started off primarily as a presenter. So I came out of, I was a sports person. I played Australian football, which is the biggest sporting code in Australia. So I suppose going from, traveling around playing in front of crowds of 100,000 at these coliseums where our sport is a religion, and then going into the sporting world and having to then find out that, going to the business world, finding out that it's not as easy. So I wanted to juggle. I wanted to make sure that, okay, I was now a presenter. I was presenting different shows, be it sport and lifestyle. I then got involved in the news. So people started listening to me deliver news, which gave me credibility. And then as I got to know the industry, I thought, well, why would I want to be a presenter? Because effectively someone's creating the shows that I'm presenting. So why don't I go one step further and create those shows? So not only creating them, if I stay involved in the production part of it as well, it means that I don't lose control, which sometimes is hard because you have to, but I also get to expand my knowledge of the industry, which is every day. It's just amazing how television works, and all dependent on what territories you're in. So when I'm producing in Australia or in China or in Southeast Asia, it's exceptionally different from how the process would work if I was in the US or the UK. So if I'm not involved from the creation process through to the production side, then I miss all of those steps, and I then start dealing with people and not understanding why they're doing things differently. So I suppose that's why I do what you've been saying, and do a multitude of things.
That's cool. I can totally relate to that. Being involved with the kind of wanting to control my own story, not having it influenced externally. I have a friend who created a movie for $3 million about his story, and it got so distorted and he lost total control of everything that when the final product came out, it bombed, and he felt like he was kind of ripped off. And that is basically my concern. And I guess it's probably your concern as well, as I guess it sounds like you're like more involved with everything from directing to the cinematography to the financing and the production and distribution, everything. Is that right?
Correct, but there is a fine line between trying to control everything and then not listening to those that have interest in your project. I look at one of my latest projects. It's been picked up by Europe's biggest production house in Fremantle Media in the UK, and they took my idea and sat with their executive team, and then they said, we love it. They acquired it. Within 3 months, by the time it sort of came out of development, it didn't even look like the show that I'd pitched them. But their research and the demographics they were trying to target dictated that the process or the end result had to change. So I now have to wait. And when that gets to air, if people watch it en masse, then I'm happy with their decision. If people don't watch it, then I'll be disappointed that they didn't stick with the original concept. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but you have to play it very safe.
When you say that they're influencing it, are you meaning that they actually have executive production control as like a CEO over the script?
Correct, yeah. So effectively, a collaboration exists where I say to them, I have this great idea. They will try and obviously look at it from a business perspective and say, how do we acquire this for the least possible? And that's not essentially always money. That first deal can just be a basic equity split where they say, well, we've got the global reach and we've got the team, you've got the idea, so we want this amount of the show. We want ownership from its inception, and this is the equity share that we believe we should have before we act upon it. And so from that perspective, they can end up owning a majority of the show. That's not uncommon for a creator to have a production superpower or a global distribution network own more of the show than you do, but then they invest their money from that point forward, and they use their people and their reach to get it to air in a quicker format.
How are you determining who gets a percentage or versus salary? Like whether they're an artist, like a director, or people who are involved with choreography or the music or videography versus who's supposed to be on salary? Where's these industry standards coming from for what you're doing and what you do?
Well, I suppose if it comes back to me being a creator, ultimately that part of it is not my decision. That will become the decision of my collaborative partner. So although I am a production company, I generally look for companies or collaboration opportunities for broadcast partners that are far bigger than I am internationally. So once you sign that agreement with those partners, they generally have their own people in place. So the directors and if you're talking about how the cast are paid even, or anyone that's working on the project behind the scenes, each country generally has ready-made salaries, but also they also have, those production companies have people ready to go. So as soon as production's ready, they're not having to outsource or subcontract. They effectively have people that are already on salary that just have to now turn their attention to that specific project.
I wonder if the reason why you're working with these larger production companies is focused mostly on the distribution, the financing. I mean, if you were able to create that yourself, would you want to take on those roles, or do you prefer to just focus on the creative side of things?
Well, I would prefer to take on all roles, of course, because you don't have to give away equity. But if you choose to do that, as you know, with some of your projects, you're talking about that chase of having to find the resources, in particular financial funding, and that can take up a lot of time. And even if you're in a position financially to self-fund, then you're taking all of the risk as well. So if it gets through development and it gets into production and we are now on air, if people don't watch it, that can affect you, not just on that specific project, but that can affect your company and where money is being pulled and where it's going. So I suppose by aligning or collaborating with others, we're all absorbing a bit of that risk. And generally as a creator, that's the way that the template works.
Yeah, it's definitely very expensive, that's for sure. I mean, one production meeting alone costs so much money that you could buy a small house for it,
Yeah.
And we've just started.
It's huge. Australia, for instance, we might do a format like The Voice, which is obviously wasn't created here, but we syndicate it and license it. And on a small scale, that's probably $1 million an episode, and that's small scale. And then you get to the US, and generally once we get to your country, it could be double the budget for production. So when you're talking about costs, yes. And so then when you're talking about costs, reward, and risks, you've got to try and absorb all of that and work out how that's best done. And if that means you have to lose equity and you do see that slice of the pie going down, I think you have to get to a point where you understand that if you don't do that, then you do absorb all of the risk, but you also get all of the benefit if it goes well. But then you don't get it to other markets as quick either. So if you're with an internationally renowned global distributor or a production company or a broadcast partner that has, offices in multiple territories, once you see it working in one country, it will go to others really quickly. And as a creator, that passive income happens just so easily via syndication and licensing, and you're not actively having to work on those projects. You can then continue working on the newer ones and coming up with the next great show.
One of the other things I think is really interesting about you is that, similar to me, you kind of had your own fan base and kind of a network. You were a famous athlete, and you had tons of followers all over Australia. Kind of like my friend James Swanwick. He actually was also a sports commentator, and he was in athletics in Australia, and then he created his own company. And you weren't studying. I mean, my guess is that you weren't, focused on a career in film or arts when you were in college or school or anything like that. And same with me. I've taken some classes, just for, liberal arts and drama, but it's not something I study. But now I've been focusing on going to all sorts of film conventions. I'm going to institutes focused on arts. I'm going to seminars with gurus like Bob McKee about the art of the story. How much of this did you have to study before you got into this world?
Quite a bit, actually. It was funny. While I was playing football, back when I was playing, it wasn't paying as well as it does these days. So there was still players in the Australian market that had day jobs, and a lot of people looked at doing some study behind the scenes. I didn't actively do that, but what I did do is started to read books. I even got into the radio industry before television, and what I would do is in the graveyard shift, the midnight to 5 a.m., when people were actually doing radio, I'd go in. I wouldn't ask for money, but I'd sit there and watch them. How did they use the panel? How did they create shows? What was happening behind the scenes? How did they edit? So I would actually go and train during the day, even play on weekends, and then go and sit 4 or 5 hours in a radio studio and see what happens behind the scenes. I'd take notes, I'd read more books, and once I started creating radio programs, I then thought, well, why wouldn't I now take that into the TV world? So again, production houses and even live TV programs, I would go and sit up in the edit suites and with the producers and directors and just watch it all unfold and then ask them if I could get involved. So I actually did probably 2 or 3 years of unpaid work while I was playing sport, trying to learn the ins and outs and intricacies of how it all worked. And I think that's worth its weight in gold. And it's been very beneficial going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very common in my world also. We have in our team dozens of videographers, many of which also had to work for free for a couple of years. I'm looking at one of them sitting in front of me right now. He graduated from NYU Film School, and he just came back to me from Boston. And the guy to the right of him lived in my house working for free, learning about camera work as well. But most of our background we have close to 100 cinema cameras spread among 10 teams of guys around the world making YouTube videos. It wasn't necessarily, say, film or theatrical, but the step from doing that versus then creating, say, a documentary or a musical, there was a big gap, but it wasn't that much to the point where we didn't know how to entertain or get in front of an audience. Also because we're similar to you, we're also presenters. We go on stage, we present, we talk about social dynamics, dating advice, self-actualization, identity level change, and concepts relating to business is now like the new thing that we've been focusing on as well. We're using a lot of the stuff of how we've taught things and paralleling it. So I felt like there was a gap, but it wasn't that big. But I mean, once you go full out like yourself and you decide, hey, I'm going to pull the trigger and this is what I'm going to do, this is my focus, that's where things start to get really interesting. And
yeah, I was just going to say to that, one of the things about being in that industry when you decide to pull the trigger is I know a lot of very creative people that are amazing at their craft, be it behind the camera or in front of the camera or creating, but they can go away and shoot a great pilot or a fantastic documentary or even come up with a script for a TV show. But then how do you turn all of that time and energy and that footage into something that people are going to A, want to pay for, and then once they pay for it, B, going to want to watch. And ultimately, I see the industry, and no disrespect to those that are watching or that are out there, but people can invest so much time on amazing quality footage, and I get sent that all the time. They say, have a look at it. We cut all this ourselves. We filmed it. It's self-funded, and it is brilliant, but they haven't looked at where it could be marketed and if it's actually got a market. And ultimately, they could have something that is lovely to watch, but is not going to bring back any dollars.
That's true. That's definitely a concern you got to have. I mean, when I got first into this, my goal was to focus on our already existing market and audience and focus on selling to them. And then we decided that we wanted to also go a little bit broader, at least for a little bit, and expand it from there. But our goal was to just control our narrative. Now for you, my thought is that I just came from this seminar on story. And it's with a guy who has worked with pretty much every famous Hollywood producer except for Steven Spielberg. His name is Robert McKee. And he's written many, many books that are pretty awesome. You've probably heard of some of them. And I guess one of the things he talks about is how you should create this epic story as your main focus. Focus on an outline And then, as opposed to most writers who basically write a script, get their friends to review it, and then they just put it out there. And then they revise it a few times. And then he focuses on, after getting the outline, you get the treatment, get a bunch of revisions, and then you create the script, and then you get it revised. Is that the process that you go through before you put everything together as well?
Correct. I'm a bit old school in some formats where I have a pen and paper, and I've always got things being scribbled down on my desk when they pop into my head. I then take those ideas, and I might end up with 40 or 50 pages for that one television idea, and then I work my way through. So I'll go from 30 pages to 20 pages to 10, and I'll get it fine-tuned so it's in a 2-page, well-designed and presented pitch document. So it is hard because it's no different to watching those shows, Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, and where you have to get up and pitch an idea in a limited time. It is not easy. So there are a lot of people with fantastic ideas, be they in written format or verbally, but they're just unable to get that across in the succinct period that people need so that they actually want to read more if they choose to, or ask more questions. So that's a key point in creating and then getting it onto the right person's desk that takes interest.
And being in a situation where you're creating reality TV, I guess my concern was you wouldn't really have anything to be able to show them because it hasn't happened yet. It's unscripted. So I mean, what do you come in there with? Is it like just like an idea, 2 pages? There's no other things.
Yeah, it's very similar to that because the one risk about what you're saying there too is it is unscripted, and that style of format within a TV show is very hard to protect. That's the other thing that people have to be aware of. If you're writing a movie or a scripted series, you have central characters and specific lines, and all of that can be, from a legal perspective, protected and covered. But in my space, yes, it is very hard to do. So you keep it succinct. It's almost like pitching a book. You don't have to write the whole book. Just tell me what it's going to be about and the premise. Get me excited. That's the pitch document. It's really well written. I don't have to go through episode content or break down the budget yet. It's just simply to say, here, have a look at this. If they have interest, they will ask you for more. And that's when you have the second document ready, which is more defined and longer. But it's that first one that is completely essential to make sure it's correct. And that's why also, Nick, a lot of people go and spend a lot of money shooting a pilot, and ultimately someone will watch the pilot and it won't fly. And if it does, they'll want to change it. So you can waste a lot of time and energy filming pilots as well.
That second document you put together, is it kind of like a full plan with a script? It's like with a book, a treatment, potential,
correct,
everything?
Yes. Yeah, it basically will just showcase to the people not only how that initial concept works, but then how do we see it running across the series? So if it's about casting, how do we see the characters playing out and what sort of characters do we have? And then you also have to showcase the end. How does it finish? What's the hook? What keeps the viewer watching right throughout the series? And I suppose the big one too is not only the budget, but why will viewers want to watch it? You don't so much have to say it's different or it's unique. And in fact, that's probably a mistake. Most people open up their pitch with, there's never been anything like this before. This is brand new. It's unique. And I can tell you now that most production companies and broadcasters internationally have seen or heard something that will be similar to yours, but your one will be based on what do you bring to the table that differs from previous pitches? Have you got supporting partners or investors? Have you got some advertising dollars or branding? And is there a development fund that effectively takes away a lot of my risk when I align myself with you? So there's a few components to being a creator that have changed over the years where broadcasters are far more risk adverse and very wary of taking up a third-party paper format.
Got it. Well, that's very interesting to me because right now our only distribution network is our own customer database, or potentially if we are on Broadway, we would use Playbill's network and also the YouTube network as well. But I guess for wanting to get out there using other distribution networks, I hear a lot of networks after you have a completed project like Netflix or Hulu actually pay a significant amount of money. I mean, and I was shocked because I would be willing to consider paying to get on these networks. And I'm surprised that people actually pay to get on these networks. I met one guy who you might have met who created Waffle Street. And I did an interview with him, and he was at the city summit. You guys meet each other?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was surprised. He got paid a ton of money for his show. It's just like a total flip of how I look at things, because I'm really trying to create something to get our narrative out there to increase the size of my core business, because I don't want to be a full-time musical playwright or what have you, make more money in the business world. But I love the creative arts and the creativity around it, and how it could help me control my own story and narrative, both in the business world and also in the, I guess when you look at this as kind of like a giant commercial, but also a fun story and a project and the art that kind of conveys everything. So for me, more than anything else, I just want us to control our story and our image and make it really epic.
Well, speaking of your story, we should be talking now. I can do a live pitch now, but I think there's something about your life and your business that could correlate into some of my reality programs. So not only a mentor or an on-screen talent, but I think that people that are trying to carve out a creative life, or they're trying to make their dreams come true, I've heard you use that narrative before, and I think giving people a voice, in particular when I'm dealing in countries like China and India, it's amazing when you can access people that are sitting out in the middle of nowhere, but they all have a second screen, and that second screen interactivity is so vital that they're either watching shows streamed live or they're watching them on delay, but they're interacting on some level where at the moment broadcasters aren't tapping into that. And I've actually worked, or I'm working with a digital design and development agency that have created this new technology. It's an API framework that basically wraps all content into it. So no matter where you are in the world, you can actually interact with the show on a near live basis, and you can also, via your interaction, become part of the show. So you can submit narrative arcs, and you're not just voting, you're actually immersed in it. And so it means that advertisers then get benefits with ad interjections that pop up on your screen. So a lot of things that give people a voice, but give them a chance to make their dreams come true. So I think you and I need to talk a bit more.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. It sounds like technology that supports live streams for presentation of some kind, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or television networks. And I think that's really cool. Our company loves the advantages of, even IG live streams, because so many people just get so involved with the power of social media. And we're huge on social media with millions of followers on our websites and social media combined. And we're just really trying to focus on growing. So cool new things like this, we're always interested in hearing more about.
Oh, absolutely. And you'll hear more and more people talking about, it's this term, it's called social TV. But I can tell you now, and you would know it from watching television, and we all have, at some point or another watched TV, these shows may allow you to interact, as they say, but generally that's only on voting, or you might be able to hashtag something and then make some commentary. But what I'm doing, this will be, and I can proudly say that once the template is finished, it will be a first for television. There is nothing like this. And that's what's being pitched actually overseas at MIP TV, this API framework that allows people to do so much in a live format, whether that's online or just watching the television, and via social media, all the likes and the commentary allowing people to access those stories. So what do you think about it? What do I think? How do we share it? How does the producer get all of that feedback? And how do we then change the show based on what's happening in the social sphere and what they'd like to see characters do, where they'd like to see the story go? And ultimately, we don't only benefit as a creator and a producer by hearing and seeing everything. We get all of that information logged to us in a reporting framework, and then so do the broadcasters. So they now get to see who's watching, when, what social media platforms are they using, what's their age, where do they reside. It's a really cool thing that is all-encompassing. And this gateway, I'm hoping, will actually change the way that viewers watch television and interact with it.
Well, even in online TV, I have friends that are celebrities online on live stream only. They'll be streaming on networks like Twitch for esports. And although they can communicate with their audience via chat, if there's a network that also important stuff could be tagged and sent to their management team or emailed to other people, or certain messages go to certain people through some kind of a more sophisticated API than just one solo chat window, I could definitely see that being useful for people like that, even outside of the television network world, just from the online world. Since so much of my world is online.
That's spot on, and it means that anyone, regardless of age or your ability to use technology, can actually get access to this because it's almost going to happen by us, time stamping things. Where, I could have a 65-year-old lady that's got her first smartphone, or a 20-year-old that's constantly on their second screen while watching television, but they're all able to interact on a certain way. And with us knowing who they are and how they're using social media or how often they're using their phones, we can then start determining what sort of information just pops up on their screen. And if it pops up on their screen, then all of a sudden I want to be part of what I'm seeing. And if I click on that, that takes me through to my Facebook page. And now I'm all of a sudden sharing my thoughts with my community. And there's even ways where visually people can start doing things because we're now all carrying a video around, which is essentially our phone. So we're all amateur videographers, and you can record things, and then that can start to be shared, and everyone wants to outdo it, and we can correlate a lot of that information or even use it on the shows. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, do you have this at a stage where it can be tested on like Facebook and things like that?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. It was over when the gala was on, actually. When I first met you, I was lucky enough to be introduced to some really cool people because I've been utilising my skills to tap into a lot of areas that are closer to me. So, in particular, Asia, Southeast Asia, China, India, the subcontinent, even the Middle East. But we also have Australia direct channel through to the UK and some parts of Europe. But in the States, you're still the centre of the television world per se, but I didn't have any direct contacts, and I was lucky enough to meet some great people, including a couple of expat Australians that have been working in this space for 5 years and have this content, this framework, this amazing technology, but they built it 5 years ago, but they had no platform to actually try and test it out. And so by us combining me with new reality shows and them with a great idea of how to interject this technology into these TV shows, we've been testing it, and it's now at a point where we can showcase it to interested parties. But as far as building it to the end degree to have it ready, then not quite at that stage, but yeah, we're not far off.
Yeah, once you have it ready for Facebook, let me know. I know quite a few influencers that have a massive following that would definitely be interested in trying this stuff out.
Yeah, cool. Well, we might be able to get you involved from an early stage because if people want to, collaborate, that's the whole thing is sitting in Australia or sitting in America or, sitting over in the Netherlands where I've got a meeting tomorrow online. It's no longer just a global market where you can't get access. It's like we're doing now. You can start doing deals and collaborating really quickly and sharing ideas. And it is an exciting time for a number of industries, but TV in particular, I think, has to change. It can't keep going away the same way it's going because networks around the world are bleeding, parent companies are losing dollars, and someone has to come up with an idea that creates more interaction, and that is where I'm spending a lot of my time to make sure that everyone wins, broadcasters, the creators ultimately, and then the advertisers. They're getting people actually interacting with their brands rather than when an ad break comes on, we just fast forward or we switch channels or check our email.
Well, if you want to meet a bunch of creators, you should come visit me in LA. I'm in Las Vegas, but in Los Angeles, in the Hollywood Hills, we have the largest estate in the Hollywood Hills as our offices. It's right at the very top with an acre of land, a 360 view of all of LA, and pretty much when I'm in town, all day long, we have creators masterminding and meeting. They always invite their friends, and it's like a roller coaster. It's kind of like what you experience at City Gala, but all day, new people every hour, every day. So when I come to Las Vegas, it's kind of ironic that I feel like I'm getting away to a relaxing place. And also, you might want to do a video or a shot there because it has some of the best scenic shots.
Well, look, I don't know whether I can multitask, but if I could, I'd start booking an airfare now, and I'll give you a call and make sure that we catch up when I'm over there because I think meeting people like yourself that are already successful in business and have access to people that could potentially collaborate with me, then, you've always got to talk. And that's the one thing that I've always said to anyone that I've done business with. It doesn't matter who approaches me or who I get an email from, regardless, I will always reply because I just never know where it's going to lead. So a little bit like this chat, or with people that are watching that might have an idea or would like to make contact, then things can happen out of just reaching out and saying hi.
I'm curious just because we're now on the topic of networking. As a producer, where do you find your most interesting kind of collaborations? Is it from networking at a regular series of a masterminds that you attend? Is it from film festivals? Where is it the few places out of the many places that you go and you meet people that you have found the most success in helping you build your business in the video production and in your world
I
now?
would say that most people say, okay, they'll say, oh, I'm in video production, I'm in TV, or I'm in film, so I'm only going to seek out those people that are directly immersed in those industries. Whereas I don't see it that way. I say that I could be on stage, and tonight, for instance, I'm doing for 300 delegates from all over Asia. It's the Australian Southeast Asian Chamber of Commerce. It's an industry event that doesn't directly have an alliance with television, but what it does have is dignitaries. It has ministers, consular generals, successful business people that I can actually start talking to in those breaks and present myself to, so that when I shake a hand or swap a business card, they might not understand television, but what they do understand is business, and they may be just someone that might like to invest. So I see networking as more than just pigeonholing yourself into your specific industry, and just looking a little bit broader, because you don't know who you're going to meet. And then when you meet those parties, they also may have, like we've just discovered with you, other people that surround them that might be able to work with you as well. So whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's at an event that I'm hosting or just attending, or when I go to specific, related expos or functions, I don't chase people or hound them, but I do go up with a smile and a handshake and have a pilot or a pitch ready that is nice and succinct, but makes them hope that we stay in contact, and I can follow that up in more detail in writing, generally with an email.
I was talking yesterday with some Harvard students about those social pitches. You need to create what we call sticky relationships. Those relationships where you can meet somebody and you feel like you have a way to stick to them, or they want to stick with you in terms of seeing you again or talking to you again. Whether it's some interesting thing like in the entertainment world, in our world, it's usually hot chicks and free weed. But in the business world, it's usually trying to find a way to help them promote or introduce them to people or connect. But we use both, and especially because we have a party house where we have epic events. But I guess, I think that having these little pitches, whether it's not necessarily the big pitch that you're going to pitch it to in person, but being able to relate to anyone, because you never know who is somebody that is a potential good friend. Anyone who has like a loyal and positive outlook on life and is someone that I want to get to know. And if they're hustling and making things happen, even better. And they could be a part of all sorts of other cool things. That's usually what I'm looking for. What's your mindset and outlook when you're interacting and building your businesses? What are you looking for from people?
My mindset changed just a bit before when you started talking about having a house that's ready-made for parties and doing things like that. That sounds like a whole lot of fun, and I wish I could pitch in that manner all the time. But my mindset is, when I do that follow-up, I don't just write a follow-up saying, hey, it was great to meet you. I actually want to know more about that person before I do the follow-up, so that when I write that email, I'm actually communicating with that person to say, I'm a fan. I'm effectively impressed by what you have done. I'm doing some really cool things too. Keep it basic and succinct, and allow them to ask a question and give them time to breathe. Because I'd say that 9 times out of 10, when I'm submitted a pitch, I'm only a paragraph in, and I don't even read the rest, because as I'm scrolling, I can see that it's long-winded, it doesn't get to the point, It's not in any industry insight, and also the other thing is it's very generic. It's probably been the same email that's been sent to 100 people, and they haven't fine-tuned it for me. So I think that's important, to try and understand who you're speaking to, get a background, speak to them about them, so give them an ego stroke if you need to, but they've got to understand why you've come to them, and also why they would want to be part of what you're doing. So a little brief piece about the excitement that you've generated at your end, and then possibly that further information going forward.
When you're doing your pitches, are you usually using PowerPoint, or is it usually like a freestyle, like more casual kind of thing?
Casual. No, I believe very firmly in being casual. It's a little bit like my personality. I think that, there can be that professional side, but generally people are going to want to speak more to you because they like you as a person. You're not having to pull the wool over by being too professional, and you're not snowballing the concept with lots of pictures and animation. And so effectively, I don't want them to partner with me because I can use technology better than the next person. I want them to partner with me because they like me as a person, they can see the energy, and then they can read something that's in layman's terms that wants them asking for more. If they want more and you want to create that professional pitch, that generally happens at stage 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. I also, like you, get a lot of long-winded emails. Unfortunately, I no longer read any of them. I have a gatekeeper. That's definitely something that I used to deal with a lot. In fact, what we used to get is once a week we would get pitched a reality show, because our I don't know how much you know about our core business, but our core business basically involves clients paying a couple $1,000s a weekend, 1,000 times a year in 270 cities and 70 countries, where guys will go in field with wingmen. And these wingmen will teach you and tell you what to say, what to do, while you have a camera team that is secretly recording everything. And you're trying to pick up girls.
Well, have you thought about that being a TV show? I can see it
Oh,
now, Wingman. I should be presenting it at MIP TV next week. And
yeah, actually, there is a script called The Wingman that is already being pitched all over Hollywood about just that. And I was meeting with the agent that was responsible for one of the actors that they're trying to pitch for that. And also, I know that there's been a multitude of reality shows throughout Hollywood that are based on this concept, and TV series, etc. But I mean, I think it's a lot more popular right now in the USA as Australia. Australia actually represents 10% of our market, but so much of that population out there really has no idea exactly what we're doing. It's amazing. Like if you go to America, I would say like 1 out of 5 people know who we are, what we're doing. But if you go to some of these other places, it's a lot less prevalent.
Yeah, well, Australia, we are quite isolated, and we sit right down the sort of southern end of the world, and we are a massive country, but very small in terms of numbers. And so it does take energy and effort for us to actually start expanding our horizons and starting to deal with where business is generally happening outside of our shores. So we love living in Australia. It's a beautiful country, but there's so much to do, in particular in business outside. So I'll make sure I spread the word and set up links with all my business pages, and make sure that they can watch this interview as well, because I'm sure, I know plenty of people myself, my friends. I'll get off the interview now and go and tell them who I was speaking to, and I think you'll get a few people sign up and say, "Tell me how to meet chicks." How do I do it?
Well, if you want to be a guest in one of our programs in Australia, you can definitely be my guest. This has been a lot of fun. This is really cool. I hope that since you're so isolated in Australia, you'll make some time and come back down to LA and Vegas sometime soon. And if you need a place to crash or you want to grab a bite, let me know.
I'm taking that as gospel, because when you compare Australia to the bright lights of Los Angeles and Las Vegas, we have nothing like that over here. So to come and be entertained by someone like yourself, and to bring a bit of Aussie flavour into the US, it sounds like a plan. So lock that one in.
Absolutely. Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.